Welcome to SIM-PAC Live. I'm your host, Jeff Matthews, and today we talk to Vanessa Richards from CGS. Vanessa, we live in interesting times, and I bet, as a global supply chain specialist, that you never thought that you would have had to take us through COVID and now Trump's tariffs.
Yes, I think sometimes we feel like we're being punked in this industry at the moment. It's been quite funny. Look, we're not immune to supply chain chaos. You know, obviously we've been through so many different things. We're finding that obviously now things are being brought to the attention of the consumer a lot more. Like we would never have thought. We were sitting there watching the news, seeing just how many times supply chain chaos is being brought into the living rooms of people's families. You know, we've been through the global financial crisis. We've seen shipping lines go bankrupt around the world, leaving billions of dollars of cargo. We've seen vessels going sideways in the Suez Canal. We've had port strikes. We've had global weather events, natural disasters, just causing huge supply chain chaos. And then we get into COVID, we get into trade wars, we get into all of the geopolitical tensions that are going on at the moment. And the effect is real. The effect is huge. It's been really interesting to see. Not much sleep happening, but definitely interesting to see.
So tell us what you're hearing out there, because we're seeing news media reports. We're seeing, the port of LA, with no container ships in it. We're hearing rumours. You're at the forefront of this. Yeah. Can you tell us what's actually going on with trade?
And I think that's been the biggest problem for a lot of people, because there is such concerns over the information that's coming out at the moment. Can you trust the sources that you're getting the information from? Is the media biased? Is our political state and all the rest of it biased? It is being really difficult for people to understand exactly what's going on. And we did look at it. We were looking at the port of LA when obviously the tariffs were going on, and we were seeing huge lack of volume going through there, and particularly coming on the back of COVID. So we saw COVID times where we saw volumes of cargo going through the roof because people couldn't travel. So they were spending a lot of money, and huge volumes of cargo hitting the ports in all areas and the congestion that was happening there. And then you see things start to normalise a little bit. As soon as the Trump tariffs went on, we saw a big drop in cargo coming out of China. And I think it's just the uncertainty that's playing through at the moment. It's really difficult for a lot of companies to make plans of where they're going. It's really difficult for them to do forecasts of what it is that they're doing. There's some people that will capitalise on it, and there will some people that will struggle. But overall, we have seen a big drop in volumes to a lot of areas, a lot because of the uncertainty and a lot because of the cost.
Now, a couple of months ago at SIM-PAC Live Queensland, we had a meeting, we had a discussion, and the Australian manufacturers were sort of a little bit ambivalent about the tariffs. They were going, maybe it won't affect us. 2 months down the track, what have we really found?
And I think that was a really interesting point, because as a company, if you say, right, well, I'm not actually trading with America, so it's not going to affect me, or I'm importing something from America and we have a free trade agreement, so it's not going to affect me. But I think we're getting into the bit now, and we saw it during COVID, we saw it during all of these other periods of time, where the impact of what's happening in one country that you think is a long time away from you is not necessarily going to not impact you in your area there. So say, for example, you're importing something from America, you have a free trade agreement with America, so you say, I'm immune, I'm fine. But that American supplier is probably getting things like their packaging or their ingredients or their SKUs or some component of what it is that they're doing. They perhaps may be importing that from China, because it's obviously unlikely that the one company is going to do absolutely everything themselves. So that's when you find that the costs there are going to have an impact on you. Say, for example, when we saw the influx of kind as soon as the tariffs went down out of China, and we saw the huge volume of cargo pick up, ready to re-export. And our Chinese agents were saying, these are the volumes that we were seeing in 2021, all because we'd gone from 145% down to 30%. So all of these Chinese manufacturers and all of these American suppliers are trying to get their cargo through. So what did that effect did it have on Australia? Port congestion, vessel bypasses, changes in the freight rates. And that's before you even get onto the things like the changes in your exchange rate, the effect that these fluctuations have got on our interest rates and all the rest of it. So to think that we're immune and these effects in some areas aren't going to impact us, it doesn't happen anymore. Such is the integration of global supply chains now.
And did you see any redirection during the initial high 145% tariffs? Was there freight stranded? Were there ships? Well, we saw pictures of sort of ships in Shanghai, not sailing, or Singapore. What was that bit of turmoil like?
And I think this is where you're finding such immediate changes and the effect of on again, off again, on again, off again, and what that happens, because a lot of these things have come with a short period of time of implementation. And so we were finding that there was a lot of orders that were being cancelled, and we didn't necessarily see things being redirected. There were reports of cargo being abandoned at the port in America because people couldn't afford to pay the tariffs that were being applied. We ourselves didn't have to worry about redirection. We were seeing a lot of people do, and we talk about it all the time, supplier diversification. So if the tariffs in China are at 145%, I'm going to move my manufacturing across to India, or I'm going to move it across to Vietnam, or I'm going to move it across to somewhere else where perhaps maybe the tariffs are lower, because obviously we were in that 90-day pause then. The difficulty there is the fact that if you're talking about a product that's got a particular branding, or it has a particular level of manufacturing and all the rest of it, that's not an immediate thing. You can't just pick up your manufacturing out of some places and plop it somewhere else and hope that you're going to get to the same outcomes as you were before. Add to that, you don't know what the tariffs or anything like that are going to be on that nation down the track anyway. Cargo floating around over in the water, not knowing where to go. There was perhaps maybe a lot of that going on in the background. I don't personally see that myself. A couple of the agents that we spoke to were perhaps maybe more concerned about orders being cancelled and people deciding that they were going to pause everything as opposed to anything else. We were seeing, obviously, from the Australian side of things, if you're importing out of China, that they were perhaps maybe finding their Chinese suppliers had a better capacity to meet what it was that they were doing. They were able to negotiate better, perhaps maybe on some prices, because the Chinese supplier had lost a portion of their market. Hard bit is that changes when the tariffs go down, because then the Chinese manufacturers want to get their product back across to the American market.
Yes. And at SIM-PAC Live Queensland, you also talked about, for a sustainability point of view, about knowing your suppliers, knowing your supply chain.
Yeah.
And it would seem to me that in this state of turmoil, we've got to prepare for it in the long term. I mean, it's not going to go anywhere quickly. It could be tariff turmoil for 6 months, 3.5 years, and then somebody else is going to have to unwind it. So let's just say for the foreseeable future in business, you're going to have to deal with uncertainty. It would seem to me that knowing your supply chain's more critical than ever.
Most definitely. And it's not even just this current tariff scenario, because like, as we said at the beginning, we've faced these supply chain impacts and chaos multiple times. If you were coming out of COVID and you were going, hooray, COVID's finished, I'm just going to go back to my supply chain and my business as normal and not making any changes and all the rest of it, then perhaps maybe you are then more affected by the ongoing changes that happen down the after, before you even talk about things like climate change or anything. Knowing your suppliers, you need to know not just your suppliers, your tier one suppliers, but you need to know where's your supplier getting their cargo from. We've seen a lot of times where businesses were perhaps maybe put their salespeople to the front of their corporation. And customer service, sales, they're the key bits. And the supply chain people are the ones in the background. Definitely not. Our big thing is bring your supply chain people to the front of your business. It's got to be a whole of company action. You've got to bring everybody in, able to pivot, adapt, know where your product's coming from, know what the bottlenecks are, know what the impacts are. Is it coming from a conflict area? Do we have a free trade agreement? Is this company actually manufacturing the product themselves, or are they essentially just importing it from somewhere else and then trying to relabel it and send it off to somewhere else, which was one of the big things that we saw happening as soon as people tried to change? Get into it, know it. People say, I don't have time to do that. But do you have time to deal with being reactive to the impacts down the track? Well, probably less so. Why not spend the time getting to know your supply chain, getting in deep diving into exactly what's going on and where it's coming from?
Yes, because no one's supply chain is safe. Not even the penguins are safe.
This is what we're talking about. It's everywhere. And I think that's one of the big things that they're seeing with regards to COVID. COVID was global. The impact on maybe the vessel going sideways in the Suez Canal, everyone was saying, well, essentially that's just Asia to Europe that's affected. Well, no, that then affected all of the other boats going in other places. Yes. So a lot of people tend to think that it's like a regional thing. And this is what everybody said at that SIM-PAC meeting. You know, it's America. We can go without it. It's not going to affect us. The impact is not going to be there. But essentially, look, the reality is supply chains are so integrated these days. You know, whether that's going to change now, whether there's going to be a more regional focus, whether there is going to be a lot more reshoring and all the rest of it, I'm not sure. I think that you're going to find that integration is going to be there forever, and we need to learn how to deal with it.
And is there opportunity for Australian companies or Australia Inc. in this bit of turmoil to take advantage of it?
Yeah, most definitely. I would think the biggest thing for us is stability, trust, transparency. We are a long way away. So obviously we're quite dependent on so many things. Quality, stability, our ability to be open. We're doing a lot of regional negotiation with different countries and all the rest of it. We are open to trade. We're open to free trade. We're looking at the things that we do best, and we're working to partner with people that we know we can do things better with. And I think that's one of the big things that you're going to see a lot of Australian companies do now. Business is always essentially, even with governments doing different things, it's always a business to business transaction. And our Australian companies are strong. They're focused on quality, and they're focused on doing business in an open and transparent way. And I think that you'll find that the opportunities will open up for a lot of Australian companies. You look at what the government's trying to do on our sustainability side of things, on our green economy, and what markets we're trying to specialise in. And I think that you'll see a lot more of that come to the forefront.
And are you seeing any realignment of global trade routes at the moment? Are people trying to avoid the USA, and are we trying to keep more stuff within Asia Pacific and Europe?
Definitely from the Australian side of things, we do see a lot of free trade agreements going on that we've been working with. And to a certain extent, it's not a matter of excluding the USA. It's perhaps maybe trying to not be political here, but perhaps maybe being more open to other areas as well. And I think that that's what you need to be, you know, our alignment with the Chinese, our alignment with the Indians, our alignment with Southeast Asian nations, our Pacific Island people. I believe the European Free Trade Agreement is back on the cards for discussions there. We've got a good solid trading arrangement going on with the UK. And I think this is where you'll find that Australian markets will not realign away from the USA. We don't have a huge dependence upon the USA, but certainly I believe leading with open, transparent, and ability to be able to negotiate trade agreements, I think is where you'll see a lot more going through.
Right. Now, for the viewers who don't know what a global supply chain specialist is, can you tell us what companies like yours do for importers and exporters? Because it seems that you've actually got quite a big reach.
Yeah.
And you do a lot more than what, you know, a layperson like me looking in would think you do.
Yeah. And this is where we say supply chain has become such a impactful area and all the rest of it at the moment. Okay. So say, for example, if you said to me, Vanessa, I've got a product that I want to source, but I'm really struggling with the information that's coming through different areas. You know, manufacturers are saying, apparently you can say you do whatever these days and it doesn't really matter. They're trying to struggle through this lack of trust and lack of open and transparency. So they'll come to me and they'll say, Vanessa, can you help me find this product? No problem. So we reach into our global network through our vetted suppliers, and we find products that meet the needs of the customer. So we find out what the customer needs, what's their distribution network, who are their customers, who are they selling to. We look at what their other lines of market products are that they're dealing with, set them up with a supplier that we will vet. So obviously we've got some fairly key things that we need our suppliers to deal with. We want our suppliers to meet things in particular with regards to modern slavery legislation, anti-corruption, child labour, all of these key things that we say, if you're going to move and pivot across to another supplier, we want to make sure that we're going to the right supplier who's going to give you that consistency and also that ethical trading at the same time. So we'll do that, and then we'll facilitate that introduction and that partnership between the supplier and the seller. Because what we want to encourage most of all is really good, open, solid communication between buyer and seller. I think, you could pivot, you can move across and change your supplier and all the rest of it. But what you actually want to do is make sure that you're having really good, solid, open communication with your people that you're working with. So then once we've found that, we've helped them deal with that, we can actually then physically move the product logistically from A to B. And with that, we've got to make sure that we're dealing with things like bottlenecks, all of those impacts that we're talking about, congestion, what the landed costing is going to be of the product, et cetera, et cetera. Now, say, for example, you then say, righto, I want to find this product, but I actually don't want to bring it into Australia. I want to sell it across to somebody else. And so you're looking at some sort of triangle trade system, and we can help you on that one as well. Our big things are communication, transparency, compliance. We're not interested in cutting corners. We're not interested in having you do it the wrong way, because we think that those shortcuts are only going to come back and have a massive effect for you later on. So compliance is perhaps maybe one of the big key things.
Sorry, on that, are you seeing people trying to mislabel things at the moment because they've suddenly found the packaging comes out of China, even though the product comes out of Vietnam?
And there has been a lot, and you see that a lot in America at the moment, where customers over in America are saying, look, we're aware of these things happening. Don't try it, because country of origin, and this is where we say know your supply chain. Know where your product is being made. Know what component. And America in particular, there's a lot of tariff stacking, and I think this is the big thing, where you're finding things that have got a component in there that is perhaps maybe made in China or made in somewhere else. You need to know all of these things. Fraudulent packaging, fraudulent labeling, fraudulent commercial invoices, undercutting the value of your product in order to be able to pay a lower figure at the end. All of these things, they happen. They happen a lot in global trade. The shortcuts that are taken that everybody is aware of, and perhaps at the moment has been tried a lot more, but it gets found out. It's short term. It doesn't stick around for long.
Even the big things, a few years ago, there was a lot of aluminium going into the United States from Mexico and Vietnam. That was suspected to come out of China.
Yeah.
And we're talking about aluminium is aluminium. When you look at it, you can't tell where it's from.
And this is one of the big things that we say, know where it is, all right? So if you're going to get questioned, if you're going to have to declare things, the way for you to find opportunities within your business is to not just take a shortcut and try and cut corners and mess around with it that way. But the more you dive deep into your supply chain and know your suppliers and know your products and know where it's coming from and know where the manufacturer is and know the product and the true price and all the rest of it, the better able you are to pivot or to adapt or to find strategies that are actually going to be able to maximize your outcomes.
And do you do work in market for people? If somebody's looking at a factory in Vietnam or Cambodia or something, do you go into them? Do you go and do that side of it?
So we work with our partners over on the ground to actually go into those factories and make sure that they are doing what it is that they say that they're doing. So if you're going to take buyers into a particular factory to make sure that they can see what's happening, the last thing that you want to do is have concerns over child labour or concerns over incorrect handling of chemicals or faulty production methods and all the rest of it. So we vet our suppliers really carefully just to make sure that what it is that they're saying that they can do, they actually can do. So you can then buy with the confidence that you know that somebody that you trust is actually checking this on your behalf. Now, we did that a lot during COVID. So we were actually having people during COVID, if you couldn't travel over to that factory to go and have a look at it, our agents would actually go and check those products out on your behalf. And I think at the moment, the big thing is trust. Like who do you trust? Where do you get your information from? Who do you know that you, as I said, you can say anything these days and it can be true or not, and it doesn't really matter. And I think that that's what's bringing a lot of the concern and the uncertainty into the marketplace at the moment.
Yeah, well, it may matter in the end when you've got your goods being held up for tariffs in the port of LA because you didn't know where your packaging was sourced from.
And we always say, put everything out on the table, right? Put everything out on the table and go through the whole thing. What are my opportunities? What is it that I can do? Can I do this? Yes, actually, that's a brilliant idea. What you're doing at the moment is perfect. Let's keep on going that way. Can I do that? No, that's actually illegal. We should probably stop that straight away. Definitely don't go ahead in that way. You need to put it out, look at it, deep dive, make sure you understand it in order to be able to find ways to action with it. Don't just be reactive.
Yes, because not knowing and not declaring properly is a huge risk to your business.
Huge. You run the risk of actually even being picked up at the border. And once you get flagged, and this goes with so many economies at the moment, not just on the American side of things, but if you misrepresent stuff coming into Australia and you get flagged, you get inspections, you get held up at the border, it's just time and money.
Yes. So what are your recommendations for Australian importers and exporters now? If you're going to give Vanessa giving us some advice, give us your best advice for free.
Hey. All right. Strong visibility. Make sure and there's a lot of data systems and all the rest of it at the moment. We all talk about making sure that you've got access to your data, knowing where your suppliers are, finding out who they're dealing with, where your products are, what your bottlenecks are, but not just having that data, knowing what to do with that data. So this is where you actually make sure that you're actually being able to action it. Good supplier relationships, making sure that you're having good, open, strong, transparent communication with your suppliers. If you do need to look at diversification, then again, making sure that you're aware of what's going on in the other areas. Scenario planning. And this is, we're seeing scenario planning coming through with a lot of people that have got to do climate-related financial reporting, which has come into Australia. And this is where you're sitting down, having a look at all of the different things that could actually impact onto your supply chain in order to be able to find ways to work around it and see how that's actually going to impact you financially. Bring everybody into this. So don't just sit there with your supply chain department or your logistics department off the side and have your sales and customer service at the front. Bring everybody in. You don't want your salespeople going off and selling things that are not actually going to be able to be delivered, because there goes your reputation and all the rest of it. You don't want your finance people putting pressure on you to go and make shortcuts within your supply chain, because then that can come back to you either from a legislative perspective or from a reputational perspective down the track. Bring your people into the table. And if you don't have people there into the table, find somebody, whether that's someone like me, whether it's somebody at another logistics company. There are some really, really smart people here in Australia that you can actually deal with that will just come in and help you, again, put everything out on the table and say, right, what are my risks? What are my opportunities? What are the threats that can impact here? What's my loss of opportunity cost if I don't have my product here in time? If I focus too much on price, what are the risks? If I take shortcuts with my supplier and I put the pressure on them and then they go take shortcuts in their actions, what are the risks to me? You need to understand these kinds of things. Local sourcing, most definitely. There's a lot of people turning around now and working more with Australian manufacturers, and I'd like to see, obviously, now more work being done on the Australian manufacturing. That would be good to bring a lot of that back. We make some really, really good quality products, and it would be good to share those with the world. And again, diversification, whole of company focus, data, honesty and transparency, and compliance. Don't take shortcuts. It's just not worth your while. Be compliant, make sure you're accurate, dot your I's, cross your T's, don't risk it.
Vanessa, look, that's all the questions I have for you. We're going to answer questions from the live chat. So if you've got a question for Vanessa, you can put it into the live chat in the YouTube under the video below. And we'll be online for the next 20 or so minutes to answer any of your questions. Thank you so much for appearing on SIM-PAC Live today, Vanessa. You're a breath of fresh air coming in, and I love that you still can smile after all of the turmoil in your industry.
It's a smile and a grimace. But look, it is what it is. Yeah, look, happy to answer any questions that people have, whether it's specific related to their business or their opportunities. Bring it on. We'll see what we can nut out.
Thank you. And please ask your questions below.
Thank you. See you, Jeff.